have John Henry here as well. Lovely. Oh, I can see some face. Is Lee there? Welcome, Lee. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Can you try again, Lee? See if I can hear you. Try now, Lee. Okay. Okay. I think they're just phoning IT. Maybe. Okay, all right. So we'll move to 8.1 while we wait for our technical problems to be resolved. 8.1 on page 13. So this is our action register update. So we'll go through these one by one. So we've got update on the Peel Forest landfill. So that's on paper 8.3. So we'll be having a discussion on that shortly. Seal extension policy review is included on this agenda on paper 8.4. So we'll be discussing that then. A detailed analysis on traffic management. So that is still a work in progress, I understand.
Yeah, that'll be presented at the April meeting, a report on that.
The City Town Steering Group. So there's still some discussion going on with this steering group, and what I understand is that there's going to be a conversation with Mayor Bowen and Mr. Trainer middle of the week with Rosie and yourself, Mr. Dixon. So
And Councillor Jackson.
Oh, and Councillor Councillor Jackson as well, just to find out, where we're going moving forward, correct? Any further comments or questions on that? Pareora Dam. So the new regulations have been checked and does not apply to the Pareora Dam, so this action now can be closed off. Any comments with any of these actions, please? Okay, so we will go to the recommendation of that we receive and note the action register. Have a mover for that, please. Thank you, Councillor Scott. A seconder. Thank you, Mayor Bowen. All those in favour? Aye, carried. How are we looking, IT team? Okay, we'll continue on to 8.2. So we're looking at the infrastructure key project updates for the third quarter. So we'll go through these one by one. So the first one is the Road Renewal and Improvement Program. I do just have a question regarding, so contract 2494 appears to be rather a large contract, and the impacts on the on-hold Transport Choices funding cut. Just how the logistics of that big contract, how that works with that, within that. Is Susie? Oh, Susie, welcome. Because I see it is a large contract. It's been given a lot of jobs to do. So what's the impact regarding that one that's on hold?
Yes, so it is. It's our road maintenance operations and renewals contract, which was tendered 3 years ago now, 5-year contract plus 2 years, sorry. The Transport Choices program being put on, hold slash, the projects have been designed and may be delivered in the future when more funding becomes available from Kotahi, but it won't have an impact on the contract itself. So it's no contractual harm to TDC.
Any further questions regarding this update? Okay. Let's move on to the Pleasant Point water main renewals. Any comments regarding this update? Okay. Oh yes, Councillor Shannon.
Thank you. Just one question. Where under the project risks there, the main project risks relate to quality parameters being met. The reinstatement of the various surfaces throughout the sites is particularly challenging. What is done here when they reinstate surfaces? Is it returned to what it was, same sort of surface as it was before, or are all surfaces reinstated with asphalt? What's the challenge there? Can you better explain that, please?
Welcome, Andrew.
It comes down to the ground conditions, as I understand it, going through to just make sure what we're putting in back in to reinstate, say, footpath, roading, is actually going to last to go through. So it's those challenges, and until you open it up, you're not 100% sure what's there. So that's where, as it's progressing, it's just finding what's under the ground when we go through. Yep.
Okay, South Street Bridge.
It's all finished.
It's completed. The Red Roof landfill cell and capping works. The Geraldine sewer siphon duplication. Pareora pipeline. Yes.
I just kind of note that we've spent 90% of our budget. We're kind of 100% designed, done 95% construction. But then when I read the commentary, it appeared like there was still quite a bit of work to do. Are we anticipating that we're budget or better still under budget on that project? And what are the risks around not meeting budget?
just to introduce it firstly, that it's a multiple year project. This one has been dragging on quite a while, so yeah, we are nearing completion. But the budget-wise, I think, yeah, it's fairly accurate, but Andrew might be able to...
Yeah, the budget, as it comes out of that renewal to go through, as opposed to a standalone capital item in the budget, so it's out of the bigger renewal pools for that area to go through. The other one where we're going through, as Andrew just mentioned, it's a multi-year through. Because of the current weather conditions, we're having to slow right down because we need the Pariora intake back into supply with the water shortage direction through. So we're, slowing down for the next 2 months.
So I guess really my question was, the budget there says it's 22.7 million, we've spent 20.3, so that kind of leaves circa 2 million. Is that enough to complete the job?
It will be, because the most challenging parts, going through the gorge and that, has been completed. We're on the relining bit through at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, yes, Mayor Bowen.
Oh, look, thanks. Just a comment. These are great, and it's awesome to see the high quality that's come back to council now, because it's just around transparency of those capital projects, and I'm just hopeful that we can make sure these are also loaded up to the website where it's easily found, because people are interested in these. This is the lifeblood of what we do. This is what our LTP is all about for the next 10 years. So I'd just like to make the comment, these reports are great, and and thanks for, obviously there's a lot of work gone into them. We haven't had a lot of questions around them, but it's not reflective of the quality, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, so the recommendation is that we receive and note the infrastructure key projects. Can I have a move for that? Thank you, Councillor Shannon. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Pye. All those in favour? Carried. Because otherwise we're going to exclude, aren't we? We'll do 8.4. We'll move on to 8.4. Okay, welcome, Susie. So, seal extension policy. I'll take the report as read. Would you like to speak to this report, please?
Yes, presenting an updated seal extension policy. Not a huge amount of change in, as you'll see by the change table, in regards to kind of the background and what we're doing, just reflecting the fact that there is currently no budget allocated in the long-term plan. And also we've removed a clause number 7, which is now included in the prioritisation guidelines, which is where there has been significant change following feedback from previous long-term plan and annual plan submissions about bringing in a more considered approach to our selection criteria. So you'll see there it looks at if it's a high or critical lifeline priority, so that's not just roading lifelines, that includes services, telecommunications, power, etc. If it's got a high level of heavy vehicle usage, number of dwellings per kilometre, and the financial contribution that's available from adjacent properties or interested parties, and also if it has significant regional value. There is also, if you have a look at the model, which is an attachment 2, it breaks down the multi-criteria assessment. So it looks at historic maintenance costs, average roughness as measured by a road roughness meter, crashes, type of crashes. So there's a table there that is followed. So basically it incorporates the things that the community, that we've heard the community asking for. And I think that's probably about all I've got to say about it.
Thanks, Susie. So just to remind the councillors, we have about approximately 700 roads in our district. Previously, we had a budget of 330k a year to do seal extensions, which is approximately 2 kilometres of roading, but that has been pulled for this long-term plan at this stage. And we expect to receive submissions via the long-term plan on this decision. So I have a question on number 3. Schools aren't included on page 163, I think it is. Number of traffic movements or dwellings. So schools not need to be part of that assessment?
No, there's, as far as I'm aware, there is no operating schools on the unsealed road network. There is school bus routes, however, noting that these change over time. You know, the school bus that could have been running up one area for a whole lot of kids in 5 years' time no longer has kids in that property. So, yeah, it's around, you know, the longer term view, which is you're really looking at the cost, the crash history, the dwelling numbers that are on there. Yeah.
Any questions from councillors regarding this policy? Yes, Councillor Jackson.
I was just curious, Susie, private investment. So what sort of appetite has there been in the past for private investment into some of those unsealed roads? Has there been much historically?
So prior to me starting, so I've been here nearly 8 years, prior to me starting at Timaru District Council, there was one seal extension up at Te Moana Gorge Road that did have private contribution to it, but so far everything else has been requested to be fully funded by the Infrastructure Committee.
Yeah, there has been another one which was Orari Station Road. Sections of that were also had private contributions towards. Yeah, generally we asked for 50% at the old seal extension policy, but this is so basically reduced that down to 1 point for every 1%. So yeah, different way of doing it, but.
Councillor Pye.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. On your matrix on the table 1, the criteria assessment on page 166, with the crashes, you don't seem to account for the number of crashes. So you could have a road that had 30 minor injury crashes and it still only scores 2 versus 1 fatality, which is 5. And I just wondered, is there a way you can build in there to account for the number of crashes rather than just the type?
Yes, certainly there would be, and that's why we've kept kind of that model separate to the policy so that we can, you know, it follows the intent of the multi-criteria selection, but there is the ability to look at the specifics around crashes, because we did have a look at the number of crashes, then we ran some scenarios through the model and it didn't actually change much, and then so we went to the death and serious injury versus no crash, but yes, certainly something that could be looked at when there was funding available and a request to do so.
Just one other question or comment is on page 167, and right down the bottom it says that roads that have significant physical economic barriers to undertaking seal extensions cannot be assigned a higher priority value. So are we comfortable just going, if it's too expensive or too hard, we're just not going to give it a high priority? Because I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that.
No, that's a fair point. It was more targeted that it might be a very expensive crossing and involve, you know, bridge upgrades, those kind of things. So it's more looking at how it fits into the wider network and what's feasible. I suppose it's more around feasibility of delivery, but that could come out, yes.
I think I'd be more comfortable knowing it's a high priority and it still rates as a high priority, but there are challenges in delivering the work, rather than just going, we're not going to assess it as high priority.
Fair comment. We are happy to remove that statement.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Shannon.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Just one of them was with regards to number of dwellings per kilometre. Is it also considered the dwelling proximity to the road? For example, a number of rural houses are not right beside the road, and I know that you might be considering when you're living beside the road, obviously the dust and what have you, but the proximity, sometimes that means that's not an issue. Is that considered?
No, we haven't got that considered, because generally per kilometre the houses that wouldn't be as close to the road, there'd be less houses per kilometre, so you'll generally speaking, the subdivisions that have occurred in the rural area have been small blocks along the road frontage, so you tend to get those pockets of housing, as opposed to on the longer rural roads where there might be the old farm homestead. They'll be further back off the unsealed road.
Okay, thanks. So the other one was following up on Councillor Pye's comments about crash data. Is cause of crashes considered here as well? Because just pure data on number of crashes or even injuries isn't necessarily relevant if the cause hasn't been determined as being an unsealed road, for example.
It's a tough one with the cause because we don't have all of the information. We do have the information that comes out of Waka Kotahi's crash analysis system. Generally speaking, there's multiple other contributing factors and road is not generally defined as the cause of the crash, so there'd usually be other causative factors. But I suppose if it's inappropriate speed on an unsealed road, that will cause a crash, but it won't be defined as the road itself. So it's actually quite hard to drill down into that level of information. There is, still a lot of impaired driving that can be, more causative of these types of crashes.
So that data is available at that level. Following police reports, of course, would show that, wouldn't they? So it wouldn't necessarily make sense to use all that data.
Yeah, it would be quite hard to attribute it solely to the road. I don't think we've got any in recent history, at least, that have been causative of the road conditions itself. So, yeah, probably wouldn't tell the story that we wanted it to tell, which is why we went with number of serious crashes, the seriousness of the crash, but taking into account Councillor Pye comment around number of crashes could also add value to the story. So we'll figure out how we could incorporate that.
Yeah, generally speaking, roads should be very forgiving. That's the philosophy that's used. So people do make mistakes, whether that's through impairment or just through lack of attention. But the road should be able to accommodate a lot of those mistakes. So the crashes do have a road factor in them, but it's not necessarily the only factor.
Just a quick question, Susie. How frequently are we getting notification of crashes on some of those shingle roads? Do we get all of them? Because we see a lot that someone's gone through a fence, but I'm sure we're not getting those reports. Just wondering how frequently do we get a report of an accident on a shingle road?
So some community members are reporting observation of crashes through our CRM system. I'll acknowledge that we do need a better system to be able to capture all of that information. But this information that we're working off for the first iteration of the multi-criteria analysis review does base on the crash analysis system, which is Waka Kotahi's tool, which relies on it the crash being reported to New Zealand Police, because it's the only way at this stage that we can get the fair data that is from a network-wide view as opposed to any particular road or street.
Just one other quick question. There doesn't seem to be sort of any weight behind how some of the shingle roads only have a one-way in, one-way out system where there's no actual side roads to take. And that, do you think that could be something possibly that could be considered in the future?
Yeah, that could probably be in the second phase, looking at that, not quite Lifeline's link, but that it is the only way in and out. So not technically a lifeline by definition, but to that community or that member that lives there, it is the only way out. So yeah, that could certainly be incorporated into the second stage of the assessment. So not in the, the weighted multi-criteria analysis table, but in the high, medium, and low priority. It certainly could be something.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Any further questions?
I've just got one. Heavy vehicle usage. What period's that over? Doesn't actually say anywhere.
So they're based on averages, so average vehicles per day.
Per day?
Yeah.
On that point, sorry, if I may, Madam Chair. When you're counting that, obviously that's going to be huge. If you're just taking a month and you're going winter versus, a busy period, or you're doing it when forestry trucks are running or not, or, silage contractors are running. So how do you account for that when you're working out heavy vehicle usage? Because that would make a huge difference.
It does, and we do have a much wider program we need to cover for the traffic count. So obviously, to make sure we're designing and looking after our sealed roads as well as we can, we have to make sure we've got timely traffic counts on those. But also we don't neglect the unsealed roads. They do get traffic counts. For example, we had a request from a community to get a traffic count when they knew that the road was going to be busy. So we can get the busy count as well. But also then you'll have the average that happens the rest of the year. So we do respond when we can, but noting that it's, we have got 1,800 kilometres of road that we need to count and make sure that we're doing the work that we need to do to confirm our traffic count across the network, which helps obtain the wider funding from the Transport Agency. So we have to be mindful of that.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation is that we receive the updated seal extension policy and adopt the proposed seal extension policy with that amendment to be made. Susie from Councillor Pye's comments. I'm happy to move the recommendation if I have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Pye. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Okay, can we go back to 3.8 now? Very good. So, report 3.8. So, welcome John Henry and Lee Griffiths. Lee, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Welcome, thank you. I'll take the report as read and give Mr. John Henry and yourself, Lee, an opportunity to speak to the report if you wish to.
I wasn't going to say much. From our point of view, we'd like to have that work completed ASAP, and that's as much as I'll say on the matter. I have read the report. There's all sorts of conflicting bits and pieces in that report around earthquake possibilities, all sorts of things like that. There could be immediate effect as to that tip going into the river itself, causing an environmental impact on that river and the environment. But yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Lee, I welcome any comment to the report.
Thank you. I'll just comment that environment budgeted in our strategy to maintain the. So while
you're breaking up, sorry, Lee.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Sorry. I'll just comment that environment isn't budgeted in because they're outside the district. So considering your long funding options to deal with the permanent solution, we just encourage that are the short ones as well. Environment category budgeted current to
Lee, I'm so sorry, but you're breaking up. We're only getting part of your sentence.
That's okay.
Beg your pardon? Do you want to try to turn your video off and see if that just helps with the transmission?
Is that better?
Yeah, let's start again.
Thank you. The piece I just mentioned to that.
Oh no, sorry, it's not any better. Okay. I think maybe we just need to have this discussion.
Can I just probably
say
something too? So basically, there is an option of deferring this job. It's certainly not the recommended one. It really comes down to a basis of risk. So as you can see in number 15, or option 2, there's that risk table there, which indicates that in 2 years, there is a bit of risk there. And as you continue to delay, the risk gets higher. That's just basically because of the frequency of flood events and any other natural events that may occur puts the landfill at risk. Or I just want to point out with the costs as well, option 1, the $12 million there, half of that is actually our own waste charges for disposing of the refuse into the Red Roof landfill. And there's about another $2 million of that is waste levy. We're hoping to get off that one. We will be making an application, and certainly indications are that we will be exempt from waste levy. So that will reduce that cost a bit there. The option 2 is doing it in a stage approach is a higher cost because you have to, when we excavate part of it, you need to recap it, reseal it, and there's a lot of work involved in there. I think the other negative effect there is to the residents and the fact that they will have an ongoing excavations for quite a number of years under that option. It won't be very pleasant. And also the damage to our roads as well over that longer period. So we believe, as officers, we recommend that, we get in there, do it once and finish the job. I think and basically it's about protecting the Rangitata River at the end of the day. That is the risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. I'll open the floor for questions. Mayor Bowen.
No questions. Just a quick comment. My only concern is around the dollar value being in the public realm, and I'm not sure if this is actually ideal practice because we've sent a budget out there to the market when we haven't gone to the market yet. But look, I am pretty comfortable with this, and I'm happy to move the 2. But I'd like to just add 2 other recommendations. 3 being that the work go to tender be brought back to the infrastructure committee for final sign-off, so we actually understand the numbers from the market that are involved. And then 4, I don't know if we have looked properly at other opportunities for funding. You might be able to answer that, but if we haven't, then that other funding opportunities be sought. That may have been what Lee was possibly referring to, but whether it's MFE or ECAN funding, I'm not sure what's out there, but I'm sure someone will know. Yeah.
There is a potential source of funding, which is the Hazardous Sites Fund, a government fund, which is managed by ECAN. So we're pursuing that one at the moment. So there definitely may be an opportunity to get some extra funding.
Yeah.
Just a comment too with the tender, yes, we will certainly be tendering it. Normally that would go to Tenders Procurement Committee rather than back to Infrastructure Committee. Either way, but...
Sorry, I was just going to ask anyway. I'm quite keen to see a better understanding of those costs because when I looked at the estimated tonnes this morning based on the disposal charges and the waste levy, I got different figures to the 2 million you just spoke of. So I think we need to be kind of a little bit clearer about what the costs are and then what's coming back to council and what the net cost is. And I thought we had a decision on those waste levies, but maybe I imagined that. And so, for that reason, I feel like we need a better understanding of what the cost is brought back to this committee. But
happy to do that.
I would agree, and I think we need to break up the costs into the different components. The excavation of the old site, the transport, the internal charges separated, and also potential earlier capping it wherever it goes.
You can follow up,
Sorry, I just have, I'm supportive of doing this work in one hit. I think we can use loan funding to spread the costs. We don't need to just spread the costs and increase the cost for the council. I do have some reservations, though, about transferring a problem from a river environment to a coastal environment. And are we going to be sitting here in 30 years' time wanting to shift it again?
A comment I make there is the Red Roof landfill is a managed landfill. It's all got, the cells are well lined, leachate collection systems, everything else. It is a Class 1 landfill. The other alternative is Cape Valley, which is a lot further transport costs. So yeah, this is municipal waste. Yeah. Okay.
I know this is not possible, but I did wonder if we cannot just dig another hole in a similar location and reduce our costs down to pretty much nothing, because the environmental risk when it's already buried under the ground is not actually changing, because you're just putting the same stuff back under the ground but removing the risk of it coming into the river. But I understand that in our regulatory environment that is never going to happen, but it would be quite a cheaper alternative.
It would be nice to do, yes.
Yes, Councillor Oliver.
Oh, look, just thinking of the people of Peel Forest and the disruption this is going to cause, I think I agree with Mayor Bowen and Councillor Pye, and the comments Mr Dixon made around just getting in and getting this job done. You know, there will be roads that will need fixing. We don't want to be fixing them twice. There'll be establishment of plant and stuff that has to be carted in there. That there's no point doing that 3 times. So yeah, I agree that I'm happy to move or second option 1.
We've got a mover and a second, and we'll go through the recommendations. I'll just let the side. Yes, Councillor Scott.
Got a couple of questions, please. One, well, just Andrew, you picked up on that fund with ECAN. I think it's Contaminated Land Fund, and I would suggest that an application needs to be made, not thought about. So I'd like to suggest that we actually are doing that to ECAN. There's 50% funding there, so let's not think about it, let's execute that. 50% funding, that'd be handy. So I'd like to suggest that is actually actioned. I also just have a question to ECAN, if Lee can still hear me, around in their note it said that no further budget for in-river work was going to be carried out. Is that this financial year or never, or ever? That's a question I have to her, and then I just have another couple of questions.
Never budgeted for it.
Never.
Interesting. Okay.
Do you have another question?
No, I just think that's short-sighted. But anyway, I'm not going to have that battle today. Yeah, I agree. When I read both reports, they're quite conflicting, so it was quite hard to have a view. You've got ECAN here basically saying that, you know, 1,200 QMEX will not cause an issue. It's only happened 17 times over the last 40 years. So, you know, as a lay person sitting here and making such a significant decision, you would argue that, are we panicking? However, agreed that it needs to be dealt with. Don't panic next to me. Absolutely acknowledge that it needs to be dealt with. I just wonder, a little bit of fear-mongering is going on in such a short space in time since I've been sitting at this table. But yeah, just one of my things is I'd appreciate that ECAN application is actually actioned.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Booth?
Yeah, look, I understand there's a similar situation down in Southland at the moment with a landfill on a coastal site, and it's being held up due to the possibility of having explosives in it. Is there any possibility that we've got explosives in there? And do we know that? Because once we start digging it up, it might blow up. So I guess I'll just mention that. But actually, I was quite keen on the idea of Councillor Pye's, why don't we just dig another hole? It's not, all we're doing is transferring the problem from up there down to potentially a coastal issue.
In response to what's in the waste, it's an unknown. There could be anything in there. It was a municipal landfill, sort of started around the early 1960s and was closed at the early 2000s. So, yeah, we're hoping that everything will go well, that there's nothing, no explosives or anything, or drums of unknown substances.
Through you, Madam Chair, are we, it sounds like the council are in mind to approve it to do in one hit. Are we coming back with where the funding is coming from before we press go?
So,
Or are we pressing go even without that?
no, so I think we've got recommendation 1 and 2, the commitment to carry it out and the approach, and then we're going to add a 3 in regarding that the tender process will come back to infrastructure.
Yes.
than
No,
procurement.
no. So my comment, I think the opportunity is your tender committee will receive a normal tender process, but what you might then have is the full consideration where funding's coming from, etc., which would come back to infrastructure committee. So that would outline what we're expecting to go over the landfill, the cost of that, waste levy, those sorts of things. So it's public and transparent. Once we have a confirmed tender through tenders, that would be my thinking. Yeah.
And we need to make sure it's outlined what funding opportunities we have applied for and received.
Yeah, perfect. And 4 was seeking the other funding opportunities, as Councillor Scott has very well reinforced the point. Yeah. No, it's good.
Okay, so, and I believe it's the responsible action as elected members that we get on and do this also. So we've got the recommendations. Are you happy with them? So we've got a mover, which was Mayor Bowen, a seconder, which was Councillor Oliver. Are you happy with those recommendations? All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you. You may leave now. Okay, we're going to move into, so there was no nature. So we're going to move into the public excluded report. So I'm happy to move us into public excluded. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Oliver. All those in favour? Aye, carried.